I'm Mario Andrada, a PhD student and graduate research assistant of the Grain Science and Industry Department, Kansas State University. Today, we will be discussing about the gatekeeping theory. Now, first, let us talk about the history of the gatekeeping theory. Dr. Kurt Lewin was the originator of the concept or theory of gatekeeping. It was originally called Theory of Channels and Gatekeepers. Lewin was a social scientist and of German descent, born in 1890, and a pioneer in social psychology. He immigrated to the United States of America in the 1930s and landed academic position at the University of Iowa in 1935. The gatekeeper concept came about due to Lewin's interest in helping change the food habits of family communities in Iowa during World War I. This was to help wartime goals of finding alternative consumption of beef-based byproducts known as sweetbreads, which is either a liver, kidney, and hearts, and reduce pressure in the consumption of primary meat cuts intended for military soldiers. He concluded that there were influences or forces on a particular person who buys or shops for food that could greatly alter the food habits of the whole family. For this study, Lewin identified housewives as gatekeepers. This study on food channels was determined also to be applicable to other facets of society, hence born the gatekeeping theory in mass communication research, which was later applied and found its way in the world of communication, like the editors in news publications, whether print or broadcast media. This idea or concept is illustrated in Figure 1, where food comes to the table through different channels, either the buying channel, groceries or supermarkets, or the gardening channel. Examples are vegetable patches or farms. Food that has been brought from the buying channel, it might be placed in the refrigerator or put in the pantry to be either cooked later or prepared directly for consumption. Likewise, for food that comes from gardening channel, although produced in a different mode, the same channel of food movement and consumption was followed. However, there are forces or influences that determine how food enters the channel. This can be price, whether cheap or expensive, the attractiveness of the food, the likes and dislikes of family members, time or length of preparation with the food, or the essentiality of the food. Based then on Lewin's study, who then is the gatekeeper? Simply defined by Fisher, gatekeepers are those serving as filtering source or receiver of information. In addition, O'Sullivan et al. Defined gatekeepers are those personnel, such as editors, who occupy strategic decision-making positions within news media organizations, which sees news as the outcome of a flow or channel of raw information that has passed the selective filters or gates of a news bureaucracy. For the internet and digital age, individuals act as gatekeepers, deciding what information to include in an email or in a blog. Let us now define gatekeeping theory. Gatekeeping theory is the process by which the vast array of potential news messages are winnowed, shaped, and prodded into those few that are actually transmitted by the news media. David Manning White, a former research assistant of Lewin at the University of Iowa, was considered to be the first person to have studied the channel theory of Gatekeeping by Lewin. In a simple research at his former work in the Peoria Star newspaper, he asked the Wire editor, who he called Mr. Gates, to document his decision-making process in accepting or rejecting news items for a one-week period in 1949. He found out that the decisions were highly subjective, based on his personal evaluation, lack of space, or similar news stories had already run in the newspaper. Up to now, White's 1950 study on gatekeeping is considered to be a seminal piece of research in the mass communication world. Now let's proceed to those disciplines that utilize the gatekeeping theory. Initially, the gatekeeping theory was widely used in the field of psychology, and later on it occupies the field of communication. Currently, it is now utilized in the various fields of study such as sociology, political science, law, management, information or library science, management information systems, and public affairs. Let's continue on with those example cases or articles utilizing the gatekeeping theory. Our first example case or article utilizing the gatekeeping theory is on a review paper by Karine Barzilai-Nahon from the University of Washington, which was published in the Annual Review of Information Science and Technology Journal. This researcher studied the period covering 1995 to 2007, which is around 13 years, and spanning 8 disciplines. This research or article focused or made reference to the gatekeeping theory used in various articles. This article further scrutinized these various papers by evaluating the degree of emphasis on gatekeeping and were categorized according to the depth of treatment. These categories are analysis, factor, mention, book review, commentary or editorial, citation. Based on results of analysis using the categories, it was reported that over a period of 13 years covering 1995 to 2007 and spanning 8 disciplines, there were only 453 articles, or 2% out of 24,669 that focused or made reference to gatekeeping theory. It was also found out that the 453 articles, only a small number deals with the subject in depth. Only 12 or 3% of all the articles mentioning gatekeeping analyzed the concept thoroughly, and only 18 articles or 4% used gatekeeping as a factor. It was concluded that gatekeeping concepts are mainly used for the purpose of articulating ideas or to serve as metaphors to characterize a certain state rather than for a fully developed theoretical framework. Here is a link for you to have a deeper understanding of this study. Here is another example of a case or article using the gatekeeping theory. In Science Direct portal under the Elsevier publication, an interesting article under the Social Science and Medicine Journal utilized the gatekeeping theory in an in-depth manner. The authors, Riley and Manias, hypothesized that gatekeeping is a communication practice that has an impact on patient safety as applied by nurses assigned in operating rooms in hospitals. So here's a link that, and I would like to enjoin you to read the article entitled Gatekeeping Practices of Nurses in Operating Rooms. Now let's go to those controversies surrounding the gatekeeping theory. To start off the discussion on the controversies surrounding the theory, there is this book by O'Sullivan et al. Titled Key Concepts in Communication and Cultural Studies, where they said that gatekeeping theory is an oversimplified and of little utility theory. On the other hand, on a book by Fisher entitled Perspectives on Human Communication, she stated that and appreciated that gatekeeping is a significant element in much communication research. Let us continue on the differing views on the interpretation of the theory, and several researchers and scientists have studied the gatekeeping theory. One is Gieber, which he has a very different view of White's study done in 1950. It was based on the premise that there are other reasons in the selection decisions of a news editor. He found that the 16 newspaper telegraph editors he studied, decisions were made not based on personal likes and dislikes, but because of a straitjacket of mechanical details. Examples of which are 1. The number of news items available, 2. The size and pressures of time, and 3. Mechanical production. In addition to the paper done by Gieber, there's another one by Wesley and McLean, which is more of an improvement of a former model about communication done by Newcombs, which is shown in the next slide as figure 2. And this was remodeled by Wesley and McLean, as shown also figure 3 in the next slide, by adding the mass media designated as C between the sender and receiver. The diagram to your left is the Newcomb model, and this model is called the co-orientation model of communication. Newcomb stated that the two people, that's persons A and B, simultaneously orienting towards each other, and there is an object designated as X. This was further remodeled by Wesley and McLean, the one that's on the right side, by adding the mass media designated as C between the sender and receiver. Their model proposed that there are numerous or multiple events and story ideas represented by X's to your left, influencing how it will be sent to the receiver of the message. The addition of C into the model shows it is the gatekeeper, although this can also be assumed as a role by source A. Another researcher or scientist that has a differing view is that from McNally. McNally focused on reporters, not on editors, and further stating that the reporter is at the source of the news and first of the multiple gatekeepers between a potential news and final publication. He further contended that different gatekeepers have different forces acting on them. Bass critiqued White and McNally's studies to be one-dimensional. He contended that White's focus on the telegraph editor was misplaced because he is not the key decision maker, while McNally's study did not differentiate between the various roles of various newsmen and included readers as also a communicator. In Bass' insight, he introduced the double action internal news flow model, showing the flow from raw news into the completed product for news audiences. He elaborated that news gatherers, that is, reporters and line editors, are different from news processors, that is, editors and translators. He further argued that researchers should focus more attention on the news gathering than on news processing, since stories that are not reported will never reach a point where they can be processed. In a paper by Brown in 1979, he disagreed and criticized White's study in 1950. This is because for weaknesses in methodology, and especially for failing to consider a fundamental concept of Lewin's gatekeeping theory, wherein a gatekeeper does not have independent power, but instead has power that is interdependent with other channel regions and ranges of impartial rules. Brown did not paraphrase the theory of gatekeeping, but reasoned that researchers should be true to Lewin's original theory. With the onset of the 21st century, Williams and Carpini, as well as in Singer, both claimed that in the realm of the information and in digital age, where internet as a mass communication source, they opined that gatekeeping theory seems to be out of date, with the traditional newspapers, now referred to as mainstream media or MSM, chose to link or not to link to websites, and how those decisions forced more decisions by gatekeepers. It is also a fact that if one information source will not publish something, another one that is just as easy to find online will publish it. For the last discussion on this theory, let us answer this question on how is it being used to understand agricultural communication, or if it is not currently being used in agricultural communication, how could it be used? In my own opinion, gatekeeping theory is being used in agricultural communication through the knowledge discovery and expert information mode. If, in mass communication research, gatekeepers are treated as a selector, meaning protecting the walls and gates, in the agricultural or technological world, they are known as technological gatekeepers. Technological gatekeepers are viewed as breaking boundaries in order to connect and facilitate with stakeholders or target audiences such as farmers, producers, academicians, researchers, technicians, managers, and other people involved in the agricultural industry. And based on the foregoing discussions about gatekeeping theory, here are the list of references that I have used in order to give you and discuss with you the gatekeeping theory in mass communication. Thank you for listening.